Hey guys, it's your girl Aisha, aka Geek XX Chic, and we are back with another review to The Walking Dead. We're now on to episode 19, which was called Variant. And this whole episode was very much, in my opinion, kind of the moral dilemma experienced with Mercer and also with Eugene, with being faced with really impossible choices and what they need to do in order to, I guess, move forward after the death of Pamela's son. This whole episode focused on the aftermath of his death, and Pamela reacted pretty much the way I expected her to. You know, she was hurt, but really I think she's still more upset over the fact that all this work she's put in to build this false legacy of how great her family is and how great what her and her family have done for this community was basically destroyed, or not even not destroyed, but it took a significant blow thanks to her own son. And of course, we know that Maxine was a integral part in bringing that to light. But either way, she's angry, and understandably, she wants someone to blame. She wants to make an example out of someone to try to not only get justice for her son, but also to quell any more attempts to degrade or take away from her power in this society. And she knows, thanks to her son pointing out and screaming at Maxine before he died. Again, I said in the episode, and I'll say it again, I don't know why that girl sat front row and center to watch this happen. Like, that was the silliest thing she could have done. Like, she should have thrown that grenade from way back, you know. But anyway, Pamela knows that Maxine had something to do with it, but because she has Mercer and she knows she's got very few people left that she can fully trust or that she feels or is invested in the Commonwealth as she is, she basically gives Mercer an impossible choice and tells him that either his sister takes the fall for the entirety of what happened, which means that she would be made an example of and killed, or put the blame on Eugene, who she knows that Eugene and Maxine are close, and Eugene is an outsider of a community that she's already not fond of. So this is a very, very difficult decision for Mercer. His MO has always been to protect his family and protect the community by extension. But since the first episodes that we were introduced to him, he's made it very clear that Maxine is his priority. I think we can assume that that's his last living family member. So he feels like he's got to protect her above all else. But Maxine has been showing for a few episodes now that she's not okay with just sitting quietly and letting the corruption happen. She needs to do something about it if she can. And so he basically brings her this confession, which is terrible, basically blaming what happened on mental health. Don't get me started on using that as an excuse. And I say excuse in the sense of that, unfortunately, mental health is a real thing, and sometimes it is very strategically used to get people out of punishments that they deserve. But digressing, she sees this statement. She doesn't want to go along with it, and she basically says she's not going to because she wants to stand up. The reason she did this in the first place is because she wants to stop the corruption in the Commonwealth. And that leaves her brother in a very precarious position because he's not just getting it from her. He then realizes that Princess, who's the first episode we've seen her in since the return of the hiatus, and Princess basically says to him, like, you blame Eugene for this. If that's what you're going to do, is start cracking down on all the Alexandrians and treating us like prisoners because you know what's wrong and you're trying to cover it up. I can't stay here. Like, that's not the kind of place I want to be in, and that's definitely not the kind of person I want to be with who's going to put their head in the sand. And we're going to get to Princess in a minute because I think we had a really great speech by Princess, but that comes a bit later. But anyways, this is where Mercer's at. Like, he's looking at potentially losing his sister or losing his girlfriend. Even though he doesn't talk much about it, I think that Princess has become very important to him. So he struggles with that decision for most of the episode. And outside of that too, just the morality of it. Like, you know, Maxine really comes for him in this episode as far as what's important to him and what he considers to be his moral compass. And that is very hurtful coming from your own sister, but it's a real question. It's a real thing that Mercer does have to decide for himself. Is it more important for him to tuck his head down and keep the walls up and, you know, stay relatively safe, even if it is corrupted, or does he want to stand up and do something about it and potentially change the Commonwealth for the better? So I think that was an interesting moral dilemma that they placed on him, and we don't know as much about Mercer and his past, so it's kind of hard to know where he's coming from. Whereas with Eugene, of course, it's been put in a position yet again, and I love that the episode kept showing us flashbacks of when Eugene first came on the scene with Abraham and Rosita, and essentially that he's had a theme of self-preservation first and worrying about the consequences later. And we saw that he did it with Abraham first by lying to him about the cure and how that really fractured his relationship with Abraham and his trust with him. And then later on, how he went with Negan, and again, self-preservation, and that really hurt Rosita and a lot of the people in Alexandria that he'd started to kind of befriend. So yeah, like he had made choices in the past of self-preservation that had ended in him. Yes, sometimes he survived. Not sometimes, sorry. He survived every time, and yes, sometimes there was a benefit, like how he ended up sabotaging Negan, but the amount of damage that did to his personal relationships, and also I think internally, emotionally for him, that was huge. It was huge costs. And I think he was thinking about that again in this situation where he has the opportunity to preserve himself, or does he stand up and does he take the consequences that might be very negative for him in this case? And you see he goes back and forth the whole episode. He's got Rosita basically telling him that he should just leave and that they could worry about Maxine later, but Daryl is oddly quiet. But I think that Daryl knows that this is a decision that he's got to make for himself, because Maxine is his person now, and everyone's got someone in the show, not everyone, but most people in the show have somebody they're willing to do something absolutely crazy for. And we see by the end that Eugene realizes that he doesn't want to live a life where he's got to wonder what happened to Maxine, or where he walked away yet again from a situation where he was preserving himself and saving himself when he could have potentially helped somebody else. So he chooses to stay, and he turns himself in and taking a full confession, knowing that that's probably going to mean his life. And it's something that I think is beautiful in one hand, but also kind of silly in another. But I get it, like I said in the episode, if it had been Rick or Michonne, it would have been a non-brainer. Like, they would have never left their partner behind. So I'm not equating their relationship. By the way, Michonne is top tier. They're in a completely different league, but you know what I mean. That was what Eugene, he loves this girl. He doesn't want to leave her like this. And again, it's something for him personally, morally. He's not okay with being that guy who just walks away anymore. So yeah, we're going to see what happens to him. I don't know if they'll kill off his character, because God knows in Walking Dead, you just never know. They do kill off main characters all the time. So maybe this will be the end of the line for Eugene. I think it'd be super sad if it was the end of the line for Maxine, but either way, we'll have to see what the consequences of that will be, because Pamela is definitely unraveling on some level as well. This episode definitely showed me how her and Hornsby have been working together for so long, because she was very cold and calculated in this episode, and it really came out in the way she handled Hornsby, which I thought was very poetic, actually. I loved seeing her basically say to him, like, I know what you did, I know it was you. And basically I don't like the fact that she left the knife for him. Like, their relationship is very creepy. I still can't figure out if they are lovers or wannabe. I don't know. Anyway, she left him the knife, and she left her son as a walker in that room, along with the man that he used, one of the people, because remember, the girl, I always forget her name. She's the girl who also pretended to be Maxine. She wasn't there, but the guy that he was using was in the room with him, and they'd obviously killed him. So they left him along with the walker in the room, but she didn't kill him directly. So I got to think that this isn't the end of Hornsby yet. He's annoying, but I don't think he's quite as weak as a lot of the people within the walls are. So he's probably going to survive somehow. But anyway, we'll see what happens with Pam, because I do think Pam is unraveling. She knows that her entire city does not have any faith in her anymore. Even though she's going to try to make an example out of Eugene, there's been so much damage done now, and there are still a lot of Alexandrians that are still in the community that are still trying to fight back and speak up. We saw Ezekiel and Princess at a moment. I like that Ezekiel basically, we knew he wasn't leaving from the last episode, but that he told Princess that he understood that if she has to leave, that he supported that. And we saw Princess, go back into her history again with Mercer, which I think was a really great and powerful scene done by her. We saw a lot of work from her. Was it last season or earlier this season? I can't even remember now. But the whole scene where she was hallucinating, having the conversation with Yumiko, and that's where we found out all about her very sad past and of abuse and abandonment, and how she's basically become very, very strong emotionally and mentally in order to survive the effects of that abuse. But anyhow, she let Mercer in on it, which says a lot, because a lot of people don't usually talk about that type of trauma with other people easily. And I'm not saying that this was easy, but it shows that she definitely feels very close to him. And I love how she tied in her past of having to deal with a lot of horrible things that were out of her control, and how that's taught her to be the kind of person now that doesn't just stand by and let evil things happen, because then it would be reminiscent to her of her mother, who she thinks should have up and left a terrible situation many times when she saw how it was affecting her daughter. And that was just powerful. It was just really well written, really well acted. So I thought that was just a really good scene. And again, again, just kind of lumping another log on the fire of indecision that Mercer has to go through right now about whether or not this is the right thing to just sit back and let happen. But now that Eugene has turned himself in, we saw the episode end with him obviously telling his sister that he'd done that and giving her, I guess, the opportunity once again to sign that confession. But we'll see what happens. I think we're gonna get a little bit of a Romeo and Juliet situation here, and we'll just have to see how that ends up. If we do end up losing them both or just one of them, we'll have to see. But outside of that, the other half of the episode was really dealing with Aaron and Jerry and Lydia, and I keep forgetting the boy's name. But anyways, they're traveling, trying to get to Oceanside because they have been under some loose, what's the word I'm looking for? Some loose guard that was set up by Hornsby. But who knows what Hornsby's been doing to them since, the whole situation started. So they're trying to bring supplies to them and make sure that they're not being adversely affected by Hornsby's actions. But we see that Aaron's just kind of he's very determined. Like, for some reason, he's really not thinking about being smart about this so much as just trying to get to Oceanside as fast as possible. And in his effort to try to get the wagon off road and keep moving when they really should have probably waited out the herd, we see that unfortunately Jerry gets hurt and they're forced to have to bunker down for the night in what looks like maybe it used to be a theme park. But anyway, and during that time, we see some things uncover with Lydia. For example, the fact that she's starting to feel some type of way for this new guy, but she also is scared because her first boyfriend ever, but also her last boyfriend, he died horrifically as a result of her mother. And that's a trauma, you're not going to get over easily. So yeah, she's very much worried about falling for someone again and having them ripped away from her violently, and that's very real. And Aaron gives her a wonderful speech and talks a little bit about his his late partner, and how life is for the living and you got to just do what you do when you're alive. You can't wait for things to happen, because especially in the Walking Dead world, people could literally die any moment. So that was kind of a cute moment between the two of them. But we also see Jerry saying that he thinks that this place could be a great place to set up a new kingdom, because everyone can't necessarily go back to Alexandria. I think that's definitely anvil dropping. But he kept saying Ezekiel could come there, and then we see at the end that Aaron says, no, maybe you should start over here because you've got a whole family and you're a leader. Jerry's been following Ezekiel around for a long time, but he's got the possibility of being a good leader too. My point is just protect Jerry at all costs. I said that in the episode and I still mean it. Protect Jerry. But anyway, I think the biggest, craziest thing to come out of that soul side story was that at the end we saw a walker that climbed over the walls, opened up a way for the other walkers to get in, and then opened a door and then climbed again. All of these things trying to get to Jerry. And we also saw when that walker was fighting Lydia that he grabbed the pole that she was hitting him with. So we all assumed it was a whisperer. I mean, history would make us think that it was most likely a whisperer. But we discovered that it wasn't. He was very dead. It was very dead, whatever that walker was. And what does that mean? That means that something's changing. That means that walkers are evolving. We're going into Last of Us territory now, where there's different types of zombies. And now it looks like some of them that we heard Aaron at that point also mention that they've come across walkers that go back to where they died, or walkers who seem to have a memory of, the last place or the last things that they were, they experienced before they died. But never before have we seen ones that have actually shown fine motor capacity, like climbing and turning and gripping. And let's face it, to some extent, it's a thinking ability. So obviously that's terrifying. One of the things about The Walking Dead that has been a small comfort is the fact that these things are dumb once they die, right? They just go after food, right? They just run. They can't climb. They can't do anything complex. They just can, well, not even run actually, because they've been walking for a long time, but you get my point. You could easily outrun them or lock them outside a door, etc. But now if they're able to do these little things like opening a door, climbing a wall, that changes everything. And so we ended the episode on that, but considering we're almost at the end of the season, that makes me think of The World Beyond, what we saw in the final scene of The World Beyond, how in Europe anyways, the zombies had been evolving into faster, like kamikaze level zombies that were like much more animated, who turned faster, who ran faster, moved faster. So again, I feel like they're tying in a little bit of what happened there with this idea that the zombies are evolving in some way, and that definitely changes the game up for the living, and not for the better, right? Because that means that places like Commonwealth are not going to be able to stand very long. and that even places like the CRM are going to have to change up their MO, because what do you do when you got like semi-intelligent walkers in any way, right? So that's crazy. Not sure why they would drop that now, so close to the end, but I get it. I don't think we're going to delve too deeply into it in this season, but I can't think they dropped it for no reason. I feel like it's definitely going to be something that's going to be delved into later on in other spin-offs that are definitely going to be coming for this franchise, because even though this is going to end, we know that the Walking Dead franchise is not over yet. So yeah, that was pretty much the episode. Like I said, a lot of moral dilemmas, a lot of questions, but overall we know, and Rosita getting captured, which I think again is just par for the course. Pamela's going to want some reinforcement. She's going to want some backups to make sure that things go her way. I don't know that it was her, but I'm assuming that she's going to make sure all the Alexandrians she can find are kept as a way to make sure that she can maintain some level of control, because yeah, she's not happy. She's not happy about losing her grip on this community, and desperate people do desperate things. So we'll have to see what happens now, because yeah, Rosita, we can't lose that girl, man. We can't lose her. And again, we don't know who captured her. Maybe it wasn't, because they did put a sack over her head. So that might be Hornsby's people again, but we'll have to see. So yeah, I look forward to the next episode as we step closer to the end of this saga. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the show along with me, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, I'd appreciate it so much if you gave this video a thumbs up, and we will see you in the next video.